Tonight, gaining momentum. A petition started to move an overdose prevention site in Fort St. John. Green light. A pipeline from Taylor to Gordondale is approved. And the best of the best. The Chamber hosts Dawson Creek's annual Community Awards. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight in Fort St. John, where a petition calling to stop the opening of an overdose prevention site near a daycare center is gaining traction. The petition, launched by Katie McDonald, has now gathered over 500 signatures. It aims to prevent a safe injection site from opening near Wiggles and Giggles Daycare. Now, Northern Health says the site is set to open once renovations are completed at the beginning of next year. The building's located at the walking distance of about 3 meters from the daycare. The petition argues having the site so close to young children endangers their safety and well-being, and it adds these sites often increase crime, loitering, and exposure to drugs, and it's calling on the city to relocate the site. Wiggles and Giggles General Manager Laura Barber says in a statement, quote, "While we understand and respect the need for a facility to support individuals struggling with addiction, its proximity to spaces dedicated to the care and education of young children raises serious safety and well-being concerns." Barber adds, relocating the site would better balance the needs of all community members. As for Northern Health, they say it did a significant amount of engagement with community groups before choosing that location. A research conducted by the BC CDC finds no link between OPS sites and increased crime, substance use, or nuisance complaints. WorkSafe BC issuing fines to 2 construction companies in Fort St. John. A fine over $37 was imposed on DDE Construction Limited on October 7th. WorkSafe says a worker committed a high-risk violation when working on a sloped roof of a 4-story residential building. Inspectors say the worker was wearing a harness, but it wasn't connected to a lifeline. That put the worker at risk of falling more than 40 feet. A second fine of over $26,000 was issued to WCPG Construction Limited back on October the 16th. WorkSafe says that firm failed to ensure safety at a work site of a residential construction project. It says multiple health and safety deficiencies resulted in a high-risk violation. And the BC government has also been fined more than $750,000 for workplace safety violations in a pair of incidents during the 2023 wildfire season. 25-year-old firefighter Zach Muse was killed when a utility vehicle went over a steep embankment southeast of Fort Nelson. WorkSafe BC says neither he nor his supervisor were wearing helmets at the time and that the vehicle's safety netting had been damaged. The Workers' Compensation Agency said in a September ruling that inadequate supervision, safe work procedures, and training all contributed to the incident that occurred while fighting the Donnie Creek wildfire. That same summer, 5 Brazilian firefighters were trapped by flames during a planned burn in the interior. WorkSafe says that a lack of planning, training, and communication all contributed to the incident. Well, a pipeline from Taylor to Gordondale, Alberta has been given the green light. It's been called the Pouce-Coupe Pipeline Project, and it'll see an 89-kilometer stretch of pipeline from the existing Taylor Tank Farm facility. Estimated cost is about $341 million. It'll carry natural gas and crude oil from the Montney region of BC. The BC Canadian Energy Regulator making the decision saying the project is subject to 40 environmental conditions. The annual Community Awards were held in Dawson Creek Thursday night. The gala taking place at the Overdose Event Center. A packed crowd gathered to honor those who make a big difference to their community. Emma Hawkins was named Citizen of the Year, while Business of the Year went to True North Fitness. The Youth Award going to Rhett Robb, and Nicole Palfy winning the Volunteer of the Year Award. The Mayor of Dawson Creek hosting the ceremonies. Darcy Dober said, "This event is driven by the community, and last night was another reminder of the caliber of residents and services that Dawson Creek has to offer." Well, gunshots at the Ostrich farm in southeast BC last night signaled the definitive end to a month-long legal battle over the fate of hundreds of birds. Workers with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency have now finished their call after the Supreme Court of Canada declined to hear an appeal to save the ostriches. Annie Bergeron Oliver now with more on the case that's garnered international headlines.
A makeshift pen once packed with ostriches, now quiet and empty of live birds after staff with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency culled the flock at BC's Universal Ostrich Farm overnight, as protesters stood by, fighting the court order until the very end.
They were healthy, they were full of life, full of love, and they stripped a family of everything that they've loved for 35 years.
The saga began last December when 69 ostriches died on the farm. The CFIA found traces of avian flu in 2 carcasses and ordered the flock culled to contain the virus. The owners fought and lost in 3 different courts, including the Supreme Court of Canada Thursday morning. Hours after that controversial decision, the CFIA quarantined the farm and began shooting the flock.
There's been a lot of passion and a lot of emotion, certainly from the protesters. And of course, when the decision came down, the mood was quite somber in the morning. Once the CFIA operation began, certainly those emotions bubbled up a bit.
The department refused an interview request, but in a statement said, after consulting with experts experienced in managing ostrich disease outbreaks, the CFIA concluded that the most appropriate and humane option was to use professional marksmen in a controlled on-farm setting. All depopulation activities were completed under CFIA veterinary supervision.
They were full of life.
The CFIA says its operation respected all provincial and federal animal welfare standards, but the owners of the farm disagree.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency just murdered hundreds of helpless, defenseless animals in a torturous way.
The RCMP remain on site at the request of the CFIA, who are in the process of removing the birds from the farm. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
An audit into BC's Ministry of Agriculture and Food has identified 7 recommendations to improve how farm animals are tracked in emergency situations. According to a new report from the Office of the Auditor General, BC poultry and livestock operations have seen increased threats in recent years due to things like animal diseases like bird flu and other emergencies such as wildfires and floods. Since July of 2022, people responsible for poultry and livestock have been required to enroll in the Premises ID program. Well, that's something the Auditor General says was insufficient in accounting for BC's livestock due to a gap in registrations.
Our audit concluded that the ministry had not implemented the BC Premises ID program in a way that provided reliable information. We found several deficiencies in how the program was implemented.
The Ministry of Agriculture and Food says it has accepted the audit's recommendations for increasing program registration. Another mill closure in British Columbia to tell you about tonight. West Fraser announcing it's shutting its mill in 100 Mile House before the end of the year. The company citing supply challenges in soft lumber markets. About 165 employees will lose their jobs, while West Fraser's overall capacity will be reduced by 160 million board feet. Forest Minister Ravi Parmar says the closure is a consequence of U.S. President Donald Trump's unfair attack on the Canadian forestry, but the BC Conservatives disagree. They say the closure is what happens when the provincial government ignores warning signs coming from the forest sector. A commercial landowner in Richmond is taking legal action to have the controversial Cowichan court decision reopened. Montrose Properties owns warehouses on land where the court recently granted Aboriginal title to the Cowichan tribes. The company's lawyer says the ruling has created uncertainty around how private property rights could be affected. While the Cowichan tribes say they have no plans to displace private landowners, Montrose argues that's not enough, and the impacts are already being felt.
What do potential purchasers think about this state of affairs? What do lenders that are asked to give mortgages and get security on the land think? And it doesn't solve this problem by the Cowichan tribe saying we're not going to come and try and kick anyone off their land anytime soon. That's not the issue.
The provincial and federal governments, the City of Richmond, Musqueam Indian Band, and Tsawwassen First Nations are all appealing the court's decision. Cowichan tribes are also appealing the decision, but they're looking for more land. In Ottawa, the Liberal government is still standing after facing yet another test on Parliament Hill today. Prime Minister Mark Carney survived a second confidence vote in as many days, and it comes as Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre faced more questions over a second member of Parliament announcing plans to leave the party. Rachel Aiello explains.
MP Matt Genereux says he likely won't be leaving until the spring. But if the opposition are counting on the outgoing Albertans' vote, it's worth noting he didn't cast one in either last night's or today's confidence tests.
How many seats do you need to have a majority?
I can't remember.
Do you want to answer?
Need a couple. So call your local MP if they're not a Liberal and tell them to come in.
Prime Minister Mark Carney joking about gaining more MPs after Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre lost a second in as many days. Multiple sources say Matt Genereux was in talks with senior Liberal staffers about crossing the floor this week. But Conservative Party officials made it clear there would be consequences if he did. Genereux pushing back, posting a second statement, insisting there was no coercion involved in his decision to resign. The party now saying his announcement was expedited by Liberal pressure tactics.
The only rumors I've heard of intimidation and harassment are from Liberals badgering Conservatives in elevators and calling them at home.
The drama driving chatter among MPs ahead of a second confidence vote in the Commons today.
Matt's been a wonderful colleague, and I wish him all the best.
I think there's some soul-searching going on.
Monsieur McKinnon gets no.
The government survived the Bloc Québécois attempt to reject the budget. And now Liberals will spend the next week selling their spending plans before the key final vote on November 17th.
I sure hope that the opposition parties see how much is in that budget for their own regions.
The Liberals got one seat closer this week with MP Chris D'Entremont crossing the floor, but are still a few votes shy of a majority government. And with the Conservatives and Bloc making their opposition to the budget clear, the focus will be on how the NDP vote or don't the week after next. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, Ottawa.
The Canadian economy showing some surprising signs of life, adding more than 66,000 jobs in October. Stats Canada saying the impressive job numbers follow a gain of just over 60,000 jobs the month before in September. But all of those gains were in part-time work, where employment rose by 85,000 jobs. Analysts say part-time hiring shows businesses are uncertain about the future economy. The unemployment rate fell to 6.9% last month, with the youth unemployment rate falling for the first time since February. Here in BC, the unemployment rate ticked up by 0.2% to 6.6%. Another sign about how Canadians are struggling with affordability. A new survey saying 1 in 5 Canadians have skipped paying bills just so they can buy groceries. According to Nano's research, adults under 55 were 4 times more lucky to put off payments for their cars, their credit cards, and electricity bills in order to buy food. The survey found just over 18% of those aged 18 to 34 said they missed a bill sometimes or often. The figure drops to 4.2% for those 55 and older. Inflation and high housing costs are key factors contributing to the generational divide. Weather often gets blamed for travel headaches, but it wasn't the reason the more than 2,000 flights were canceled or delayed at dozens of American airports today. As the government shutdown continues, a shortage of air traffic controllers who aren't being paid is grounding planes and frustrating travel plans. CTV's Joy Melvin has the story.
The anxiety from it was crazy, like all morning, just like seeing if we were going to be good to go, you know? So I don't know, it kind of sucks.
For travelers, it kind of does. With all eyes on the skies, thousands of flights are being delayed or grounded.
We stayed at a hotel last night that was, $150 out of pocket. Now we're going to be another, couple of $100 out of pocket taking a rental car, driving it down.
And it's going to get a lot worse. Major airlines ordered by the Trump administration to drastically cut domestic flights at 40 of the busiest airports in America, ramping up flight reductions by 10% or more by next week, until this government shutdown ends.
It is not a science, it is an art that we're trying to deploy to keep people safe in the airspace. We're trying to prevent the pressure that we now see building in the system.
Thousands of TSA screening agents and air traffic controllers, essential workers who keep the skies safe, are working without pay, with reports of burnout and calling in sick.
When you don't pay somebody for 37 days and say, hey, just keep showing up and do your best, people are going to have issues.
Canadians bound for the U.S. could get caught in the chaos.
The major airlines here in Canada will start to pull back on their flights because they don't have the slots to get in. But also, it's the overflying flights. going down to the Caribbean, going down to South America. They have to fly over the U.S.
Fed up, angry, and pointing the finger at the politicians.
It's just all unexpected. I'm just sick of it. It's like, what about us?
These flight cuts are expected to disrupt holiday plans, and with the Thanksgiving travel rush just weeks away, the timing couldn't be worse.
Well, the city of Fort St. John hosting its annual Remembrance Day ceremony on Tuesday. The city partnering with the Royal Canadian Legion for the event. It'll include the annual parade that starts at 10:40 a.m. and an outdoor vigil at the Cenotaph. The city is encouraging spectators to gather along 105 Avenue and along 100th Street to view the parade. Then, the Royal Legion Branch 102 hosting an afternoon games and a dinner to help get to the ceremonies. BC Transit offering free modified transit services during the day. All right, please stay tuned. Noel will be right back with a look at your weekend weather.